Hello and welcome to Sass Bites. This is your weekly bite of Sass during your lunch break. I'm your host, Micah. You can follow us down there at Sass Bites. You can also catch previous episodes at youtube.com/sassbites. This week we don't have any guests. We wrapped up this last series, and we're kind of waiting on my wife to see when she's going to have a baby. So we're just kind of take it as we go and pop in some episodes while we still have time to do that before things get crazy. So what I want to do today is talk about a subject that came up this last week for me, which is a subject of organizing and using color variables. We had a situation where part of the team wanted to go one way. Basically, we had different opinions on approaches of how to use the colors and had some conflicts because of it, and made me think, hey, we need to kind of really tackle this down. Try and get an idea of what are the different approaches, what are the pluses and minuses of each one, and just try and figure out what's going to be the best possible approach for us. Obviously, the great thing about Sass is that you can create variables. That also means you can create lots of variables, and so finding that balance can sometimes be what we're shooting for. So today what I'm going to do is walk through a couple of different approaches that we can use for capturing variables, using those variables, and then talk about, there's an article I ran into recently that kind of captures a lot of these ideas, and kind of want to go through some of those thoughts and give my feedback on that. So let's go ahead and jump into it. And also I have the QA app up on the side, and I will be able to keep an eye on it. So if you have questions, feel free to pop those in. I'll be happy to try and answer those when we get to the end of it. So the first thing I want to show is a real basic setup of colors. Just setting them up as variables. Now you can do variables, you can do maps. I'm not going to quite get into the difference of maps versus variables because there's pluses and minuses on each, and maybe it's a topic for another conversation. But this right here is a single list of canonical colors being applied across our styles. So each color only has a single name applied to it, like a single variable applied to it. And so if we want to use the color of headline, this darker, I'll click over here, this darker headline color here, 252527. We can use that in the headline. Great, H1's got that color. But if you want to use that same color again on some random widget, background, border, or whatever the case is, or something that's not a headline, we're end up using that same name again. So there's some pluses and minuses to that. I'll kind of get to that later, but this is one approach where you just keep a single set of colors, single canonical set of colors, and just use those throughout your system. Now, obviously, if you need to change the headlines and you change this to pink, you're not only going to change your H1s, but you're also going to change the background of your widget. So that's just kind of the concession that you have to realize you're making there. All right, the next thing you can do is forget the idea of having like a canonical list. Just have lots of variables and assign colors to those variables. So you can see here we've got the same set of variables up there, and we've got probably a bunch more down here. But down at the bottom we've got this widget background, and we're just setting it to be the same hex color as headline. And then we also have another variable we can use for our light color. So instead of lightening it down in the widget, we can actually set that as a color. So we can, within the variable, change how much it gets lightened, whether it's 10% or 20%. So what we're doing is we're moving more of that value, more of that unique value up into the variables, and not as much in the actual use down here. So you can see our H1 has a color of headline, and our widget has a widget background, and on hover has a background of light. We could even probably call this like widget background hover if you want to be like kind of like connect everything together. So that's another approach. That's really a specific approach where you really want to kind of have control over every single one of those elements. Now the only disadvantage here is obviously we're duplicating a lot of these colors. So this value is getting used multiple times. Which means if you need to update it, it needs to be updated in several places, if that's what you want to do. So one other approach to that is kind of to meld the two together. And in melding the two together, we might have, there's some naming conventions we end up landing on. There's lots of different ways to do the naming conventions. But what we have is we have a single canonical list of colors. This transparent one, let's take that out. All right, a single canonical list of colors, all exactly unique, that we can then apply to all these intermediate variables. So we can see that our headline here gets brand color 5, as well as does the widget background get brand color 5. And also this light or this hover gets brand color 5, just lightened by 10%. So what this allows us to do then is obviously if we need to change our brand color 5 to pink, we can do that. And so everything updates to use that pink. Or if we need to change our headline from 5 to 6, we can change that without affecting the widget background. So that's the control that you gain with this, is having that single set of colors, and then we'll apply them to each of those, whether it's the H1s or to whatever widget or whatever component that you're styling. Now, I think there's some value to this, but I think that this is kind of a deep, dark road, long, dark road. It's a dark road to go down because, all right, we've got our widget background. Well, let's do all of our backgrounds. Let's start not only doing our backgrounds, but our sizes, and let's do our line heights, and let's do everything. This is actually pulling from Bootstrap, which I'm going to talk, or not Bootstrap, Foundation's variable file. Let's do our horizontal rows, and let's do our lists and our block quotes, and let's put everything in variables, which you can see there's a lot of variables in here. So they have everything in here as a variable, and you might think that would be awesome. Now all of our variables are in one place, and it's all controlled, and it's this incredible system. Well, the only problem with this is now we're back to a 1200 line file that describes all of our colors and all of our fonts and all of our pixels and all of our borders, which is kind of what we were avoiding when we moved over to Sass, going away from this single file that has all of the styles in it, and we've moved to having more component-based styles. So you say, all right, well, let's break this up into partials. So we have all these different partials. So we have like a top bar menu. Let's move these top bar menu icons. Let's move that into a partial. And we can have a partial that has all that in it. Well, now you see what you're doing is you're creating partials for menus to drive the styles of other partials. So I guess the trap here is that we're abstracting upon our abstractions. We've already kind of abstracted our styles off into a component, and then we're going to create another set of variables that drive all of that. And what this comes down to, I might be stealing from what I'm going to talk about later, but is where do you want to be spending your time making changes? Do you want to be spending your time in this variable file, making all your changes here? Or do you just want to be in your actual components, making the changes in those components? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to this article by Ben Smithett. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I saw this posted a while ago. It really resonated. There's a couple things in here I think were pretty amazing. So I would definitely check it out. Ben Smithett, Smithet. I'll certainly tweet this out after the show as well. But what he's talking about is this exact same thing of using this body text color instead of hot pink. And what value does that give to you? So I kind of want to jump into a couple bits of conversation before I kind of dive into a lot of this. So one thing I wanted to talk about was, in thinking about this, there's certainly value to having variables that are going to be something that changes constantly. If you think of, say, like a grid system and your gutters, that value should be able to change. Like you should be able to just make that change and it propagates through the system, and you should be able to constantly change it and have these really consistent values, these really like focused values that have a specific goal within your system. Those are what I'm thinking of considering more configuration variables. These are variables that feed into the system and change the system. Now, a color, unless you've got a really complex system, which like Foundation, very complex system, and that's why they probably have all those variables. What we're doing is we're really using variables not as much to configure our site, but to propagate that color. So we're taking that primary brand color, and we're using that variable to propagate that color everywhere. Not to set a placeholder where we're going to throw any color in whatsoever, but to propagate it, to make sure that blue that we're using, that infamous Facebook blue, isn't like printed out like hundreds of different ways, slightly different variations. So you have a real consistent color. You're always propagating from that same thing. A couple things that they said here that I thought was really good in this article, kind of along that same line, was Ben said, I can't think of a single time that I want to change a value globally across my entire style sheet, regardless of where it's used. Now I posted that out, and some people were like, "What? What are you talking about?" Because when you have something like a like column gutter or something like that, obviously you want those gutters, you want those values to propagate everywhere. But when it comes down to a color, let's think about like our widget. Let's jump back over here, this widget. When I go to change that widget, when I want to edit the color, the color of the background, the color of the hover, and all those types of things, when I actually make changes to my widget, and I guess I'm not sharing that screen. Let's do that real quick. When I want to make changes to that widget, where do I want to be spending my time? Like, what do I want to be doing? Do I want to spend all my time within a variables file? No, personally, I want to go to that widget. I want to go to the component and make changes in there. A lot of what we're trying to do, at least with this approach with colors, is we're trying to create a common language, trying to create a set of colors that everyone can refer to by name consistently, rather than constantly just calling some hex value or something like that. A hex value that might change at some point. But if we can talk about brand primary again and again and again, we know that we're talking about the same idea of a color. The color might change, it might like go up and down a hue a little bit or brightness or something, but we're always talking about that same concept of color. And so what I really want to, the main thing about these naming conventions is giving people something to talk about, your developers and also your designers. Someone pointed this out, the color palette from Ubuntu. And this is a great example of what I consider more like a semantic color naming convention, where you've got Ubuntu orange and white and black, and these supporting colors of the aubergine. What? I don't even know how to pronounce that one. But these are the colors that they're using. These are the names that they're going to be referring to when they talk about changing something from one to another. It's like, hey, I need you to change that text from cool gray to warm gray. That makes sense. That's something that you can do. And what I would do is say, okay, where is that text? And go into that partial and change it from the word cool gray to warm gray. And now I've changed what that component color is using. Instead of going to some variables file and going down and finding where that one thing is determined and changing it there by pasting the hex value or using some color that's abstracted out even further. So when you think of colors, think of propagation. Don't think as much configuration, because what we're doing is we're using these colors, using these variables to get this color everywhere we want it to be. The amount of times that you're going to just make a site-wide change of every single instance of that color is probably going to be pretty small. What you're probably going to end up doing is maybe shifting that color slightly in hue or lightness. But what you're going to end up doing is like, I want to change all of my headers. Okay, well, if you're doing extends for all of your headers, go to your extends file. I mean, that's where all of your where all of your headers are anyway. Go into there and just change you got 8 of them. All right, no big deal. Go and change all 8 of those colors to whatever the new header color needs to be. And you can continue to use those semantic names, those names that actually have value, those names that people have referred to and continue to use without having to worry about this complex system that's wrapped around it. So anyway, I would suggest go and check that out. Go and check that article out. This is just a real quick kind of my thoughts, getting a chance to get that out there. But propagation versus configuration variables, and also just what's a semantic variable? Because with variables really have the variable name has a lot of meaning to it. Definitely it's better than if it's just like variable 1, variable 2, color 1, color 2. So you want to attach some meaning to that variable name, and it's going to have some semantic value in that. Just like you're doing there's semantic value in naming your like your extends, your header extends, like primary header. It's like you're not going to change all of your primary headers to secondary headers at some point. No, you're probably going to go to all those partials and change what's being extended. So yeah, just a caution. Be careful how far you abstract things out. Make sure that there's still a lot of value inside of those partials themselves, or at least in the extends of the things those are extending. Because when you start building your entire system around variables, why not just have a single variable which contains everything in your entire site, and you just call the variable and you're done. I mean, that's some abstraction. That's just too much. And we really don't need to be doing that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. These are just a couple examples that I kind of got back from some people. I tweeted the question out of how you use your colors, the advantages and disadvantages of those different systems that we're doing, or maybe how you're using maps to make that even better. Because there's lots of fun functionality there. So whatever you do, just make sure you put some thought into it before you move down that road, before you have different competing systems coming into a project at the same time and causing lots of conflict. So have fun with it. I might see you next week, maybe not, but I'll surely be seeing you in the next coming weeks as things settle down over here. So if you stop by for this quick little spouting of my brain, I appreciate it, and we will see you in the coming weeks. Thanks. Bye.